Alrighty, so it is the beginning of a new month, which means that usually I will do the emotion index of the previous month, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're doing the May Emotion Index, and if you can believe, we're actually now at the halfway point of the 2024 MLS regular season. Most of these teams have now played exactly 17 games. A couple of teams have played 16. We got Inter Miami playing the most with 18 games so far this season. But yeah, this is not only to a point where we have a good idea of how each of these teams are this season. But also, these next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting because we got the June international break, and unfortunately, as much as there was talks that there's going to be no MLS game during the international break, it's not going to happen. It seems like there's going to be a couple of teams that's going to be playing during the international break, and then of course we got Copa America that is coming up, and the Euros that is coming up. So a lot of these teams that are going to be missing players to both of those tournaments because MLS did have decided that they are going to be playing through Copa America, which again, just like how MLS game playing during the international break, it was a very unpopular opinion. But that being said, let us talk about the rankings. Obviously, the top ranking of the emotion index is everything is doing great. So these are the fan base that is very happy with their team as we hit the halfway point. The second tier is, their fan base are definitely happy about their team, although there are some teams that maybe they're heading to the wrong direction after being on this tier for a while. The mid tier is, of course, the meh kind of tier. It could be better, it could be worse. These are the fan base feel like their team is stuck in mediocrity and is inconsistent. The fourth tier obviously is for fan base that are definitely not happy about their team or the fact that things are definitely starting to go south after maybe a good start to the season. And then of course the fifth tier is the panic tier. This is the tier where their fan base can't wait until the season is over and also can't wait for someone to be fired. And I'll mention who potentially could be fired for teams that I put them in this tier. And then there's actually a special tier where I said that this is grieving after a CCC disappointment, and I'm gonna put Columbus in that tier because yeah, Columbus of course is definitely grieving after that loss against Pachuca in the final in a game where yeah they just didn't show up in that game, and they'll be very disappointed that they're unable to join the Sounders as the second MLS team to win this competition. And I also put them in there because again, they haven't played in the last couple of match week, and I'm still gonna just say that where they are in the standings right now, which I think they're seventh right now in the Eastern Conference, and knowing that they're gonna have at least another week of break before their next game, this does give Columbus not only a chance to rest, but also just mentally trying to focus back into league play because it's definitely tough to go into a final and there's confident that you can make more history, only to just completely fall apart and fell flat like what we saw with Columbus against Pachuca. But the good news is that they do get a bit of a reset, and that maybe that will definitely help Wilfred Nancy team to try to get themselves do well in league play. I mean, before the loss against Pachuca, they were actually doing pretty well in league play, and there's no doubt I think that's going to be the case too once the crew does get back into league play. But that being said, let us actually go in the order where I'm going to go geographically. So I'm not going to go alphabetical or order like I usually do. I'm going to go geographical order. So I'm going to start with teams in the East and then make my way to the West. Basically, I'm going to start with the East, go down South, go down North again, and then eventually make my way to the West. So pretty much all these Western Conference teams is going to be near the second half of this emotion index. And we start off with Montreal, who I think they're kind of like the easternmost part of the team if you look on the map. And yeah, for Montreal, I would say they're right here where things are definitely going south and things are haven't been good so far for Laurent Courtois, and it's a shame too because after a good start to the season and there's a lot of belief, this team has been kind of inconsistent lately. Obviously, the big issue of this team is defense. I mean, the defense of this team has been pretty bad under Laurent Courtois. I think for a while they had the worst defensive record in the league. I think the Quakes have just surpassed that because the Quakes, of course, shipped 5 goals past NYCFC. But still, this system that Laurent Courtois is run, which, as I mentioned before, is very similar to Wilfred Nancy. It just feels like, as much as Laurent Courtois is trying to run the system, maybe Montreal just doesn't have the player, doesn't have the quality, and also not to mention, obviously, off the field situation is not good whatsoever. A couple of of the front office have left. Obviously, Montreal fans are very unhappy about that, especially of a certain owner that is currently with the that owns this team. That yeah. I think, as I said before, between John Fisher and Joey Saputo, you can definitely argue those are two of the worst owner in MLS right now, and two of probably the most hated owner right now in MLS. Now, moving on to New England. So for the Revs, I think they're still here, and I know they finally got double-digit tally and finally got their third win of the season. But I don't think Revs fans are going to be happy where they are in the standings either, and that they still have a long way to make up to trying to get themselves back in playoff contention. Basically, they're going to have to go on a Sporting KC run, just like what we saw last season. And I know they got that win on the road against Nashville, but still, Nashville is not doing very well this season, and no, I will also say that at least the players under Caleb Porter, as much as there's so much turmoil that is off the field, on the field they're actually doing pretty well. They're actually still playing hard, which is kind of the reason why I think Caleb Porter hasn't been fired. I mean, if you want to talk about someone needs to be fired, it's obviously going to be Caleb Porter, and that as much as I mentioned he's a dead man walking for the past couple of weeks, somehow he's still there, and I'm not sure if this fan base are that happy to see him still being there. Again, after that turmoil that we saw a couple of weeks ago with the play clashing with Caleb Porter, and then of course the front office. I believe Caleb Porter missed his meeting with an owners, and that it seems like that was supposed to be the chopping block moment, but yeah, it feels like maybe Caleb Porter decided he thought of that first and say, well, you can't fire me if I don't actually attend the meeting and you actually announce that I officially been relieved of my duty of the as a head coach of the New England Revolution. Now, we go to NYCFC. Yeah, everything is great right now for NYCFC, and what a difference it has made in this past month or two for NYCFC. Remember in the beginning of the season, NYCFC fans were demanding for Nick Cushing to be fired. Yeah, look how things have definitely changed. I'm pretty sure all those critics of wanting Cushing out is pretty much all silent because yeah, NYCFC is playing some very good soccer right now. This is probably the best soccer and best stretch of run that NYCFC had since when they are won MLS Cup back in 21, and also a couple of years doing where we always see NYCFC being a good regular season team, but unfortunately falter in the playoffs. And I wonder if this is going to be the same thing this season as well, because again, I mean, I think it is maybe a little harsh to say that if NYCFC falter in the first round after having a good regular season, the fans want Nick Cushing to be out because again, this is a team after last season where they didn't look so good, and also not to mention we see these players that I think this is also not surprising that NYCFC is starting doing well because it seems like these players are finally start to build that chemistry, and whatever Nate Cushing trying to implement in the system, it's finally started to pay off, and this is also where you see in MLS, as much as I know no head coach turnover is at an all-time high, when you of course give the head coach a chance to implement his system, and that especially when you have a team that was full of new players like NYCFC has bought a lot of new players, it takes time to implement, and that as much as I know that NYCFC is definitely not one of the fan base that are very patient when it comes to that, um I think the front office did a good job in terms of showing that faith, and it's definitely paid off because right now I'm pretty sure no NYCFC fans are yelling pushing out after this incredible run that NYCFC has been in this past month or two. Now we go to the New York Red Bulls, and yeah, so for the two New York teams, things are definitely looking great here. Now, unlike NYCFC, things have been looking good pretty much throughout the season for the Red Bulls. They've been very strong this season, and as I mentioned before, the Red Bulls, I feel like this season was what we thought that they could be like last season. If last season they can actually find those goals score and have players that can put the ball in the back net. Well, right now, Emo Frostberg is definitely doing that, and even Lewis Morgan chip in a couple of them, even though his numbers started to kind of slow down compared to what we saw in April. But either way, this is a Red Bulls team that is a very strong team. They're very good defensively. They score enough goals to get themselves wins. And as a result, this is a team that's been very good throughout the regular season. But unfortunately, unlike NYCFC, I would say that the Red Bulls, their fans aren't don't really care about what happened in the regular season. It's what happened once we get to the postseason. And if they don't get that monkey off the back, the reason why I say NYCFC fans maybe might not look at this as a failure if they do get their get themselves knocked out in the first round or the playoff exit is at least they won a cup, and that's gonna definitely help the fan base to realize that. I know it's a disappointing exit, but at least we won a cup. The Red Bulls fans don't have that. They desperately want to go on a deep run and desperately trying to match their intercity rival NYCFC for that spot because as long as the Red Bulls don't win a cup, NYCFC fans are still gonna lure them. They say that we're still the first New York team to win an MLS Cup. Then we go to Toronto. Yeah, I think Toronto is still doing good, and again, I think that every time when you think that TFC is gonna start to falter and reality is starting to set in, they keep winning, and again, all credit goes to John Herman of what he has done. Yes, we have seen at times there's been some growing pains, and we have seen some old habits kind of came back to this TFC team, especially on the defensive end. I think the defense has started to look a little bit like last season, where they were shipping goals left and right. But it really doesn't matter when you have Benedeski and Insigne hitting on full form and this attack looking really decent. Well, that is if Benedeski can actually stay on the pitch because again, one of the big thing that frustrates TFC fans about Benedeski is that as much as he's scoring goals, he's also having some disciplinary issue. I mean, two red card already this season in a short amount of period, and then Insigne, he got injured a bit. He is actually going to come back to this team after attending family matters, and we'll see whether if he can replicate what he has done in the beginning of the season. I mean, either way, I think this season is what we've kind of thought last season could be if those two Italian players can hit stride, and that's exactly what we see. But still, all credit has to go to John Herman. He's been doing an amazing job, and TFC fans, I think they're kind of almost a little spoiled the fact that this was supposed to be a deep rebuild, and yet they're doing very well so far this season. Uh, can't say so much about the Philadelphia Union though, because yeah, for the Union, they're kind of right here. I'm not gonna put them in the category of panic just yet, and somebody needs to be fired because obviously there's no way in the world they're gonna fire Jim Curtin. I mean, with the job that Jim Curtin has done to this team, his job is gonna be safe, even if the Union is going to continue to go through this bad run. But yeah, again, they have stopped the losing streak. That's the good news. The bad news is they're not winning in games, and now it seems like the goals are starting to dry up again for this Union side. The defense is still a mess this season. They still don't have Andre Blake back in this team, and I think the other alarming thing is that they're not winning game at Subaru Park, and that is something I never thought I would say about this team heading into this season, or even a couple of years ago, because this team, I mean, they're whenever they're playing at Subaru Park in front of their home fans, it's a guarantee win. They don't lose a lot of games, they don't draw points at home, but this season it's been the complete opposite. I mean, they have been dropping points left and right, and that's where I think Union fans are all a little frustrated about that. And not to mention, this was supposed to be the year they made that last all-in push, and that doesn't seem like it's going so well, at least halfway into the season. Then we go to DC United. Yeah, I think DC is kind of right here, where again, the frustrating part about DC this season, if you're a DC fans, is that this team can be better. This team can be higher in the standings, and the underlying number says that they should be better where they are right now. The issue with DC though is kind of the issue that we see with other teams in the West that are struggling this season despite their underlying number being good. Looking at you, Sporting KC, is that they don't play a full 90 minutes game. I think that's kind of the thing that, as much as Troy Lesane has done a great job with this DC team, I think DC fans are sort of frustrated the fact that this team has dropped so many points this season from a winning position and not playing a complete game. I mean, there's time where they play a good game, but then they have some lapse of concentration, and next thing you know, they don't get the full 3 points that they needed to. And until that, of course, change, DC is going to be kind of stuck in this mediocrity range. Though, at least I will say that some DC fans will say, we'll definitely take that compared to what happened last season when it was an absolute nightmare last season with them not doing very well under Wayne Rooney. Then we go to Charlotte. Oh yeah, Charlotte fans are very happy about their team right now. I mean, this is probably the best stretch that Charlotte has had in pretty much their existence in MLS. I mean, they went through a stretch where their defense was just untouchable. Like they had games without conceding a goals. And again, Dean Smith, another guy that I think that there's definitely some interesting uh head coach that could win Coach of the Year this season. And really at the halfway point, I can definitely name a couple that could be in that list, especially in the East. I mean, I mentioned John Herman many times. What about Dean Smith? Because what Dean Smith has done with the way that this is a Charlotte team that not only this season coming in, not a lot of people were expecting to be very good because they just don't have the talent to do so. And I still think that kind of is the case, especially when you look at the attack. But honestly, what Dean Smith has done with the way that to compensate for the lack of talent, he's basically decided that they're going to be playing this compact kind of soccer and just kind of playing boring style soccer, but also a style of soccer that can grind, resort, and get 3 points. And honestly, I know. It might not be a fun experience to watch Charlotte game if you're a neutral, but Charlotte fans wouldn't care because it's getting them resort, and with the way that they're now fifth in the standings, which is the highest that they have ever been in the standing, yeah, Charlotte fans are very happy with the job that Dean Smith has. And now imagine if this team is able to get a chance to spend money, and not to mention, as if I haven't mentioned before, Schwadetsky most likely is going to come back to this team because the club that is currently on loan decided not to exercise the option to buy option. Now all of a sudden, this team could be a dangerous team. I mean, if they can get a decent number nine, a DP number nine on this team, yeah, if this Charlotte team can get going on the attack, this team could be a dark horse team in the Eastern Conference. Then we go to Atlanta United, and yeah, Atlanta is going to be right here, but I will say that, for Atlanta fans, at least from the last couple of days, they definitely feel like they're right here because, yeah, Atlanta fans finally got their wish. Well, maybe half of their wish because, Atlanta fans have been wanting Gonzalo Pineda and Carlos Bocanegra to be gone. At least got the wish of Gonzalo Pineda relieved of his duty a couple of days ago after that loss against Charlotte. Now, obviously, Bocanegra is still there. And, I mean, I've said so many times that he's under a hot seat. It's unbelievable how much of a leash that he is getting, and I think that's kind of what maybe still frustrate Atlanta fans. And clearly, it is the number one name in that Atlanta United team that is the one that someone needs to be fired after Pineda. But that being said, now that Pineda is no longer there, now Rob Valentino takes over. And last time Rob Valentino took over this team on an interim basis, they did very well, and I'm pretty sure I've heard a lot of Atlanta fans have saying good things about Valentino, and that maybe there could be a chance that not only he's gonna be an good intern head coach, but he might stick around and maybe get promoted as the permanent head coach. But yeah, as of now, before we once again launch the Raw Valentino Air 2.0 for Atlanta United, the team is still 13 in the standing and are still staring at a situation where they only got one win in their past 10 games. Now, moving on to the next team, Orlando City. Yeah, they're in the same spot where, obviously the someone need to be fired is Oscar Pereira. A lot of Orlando fans are not happy with the job that Oscar Pereira has done. And a lot of that maybe due to the fact that, again, a lot of the fans are frustrated with the style of soccer that he plays, especially at home where it's very negative. And I also reiterate what I said about Oscar Pereira, and that it feels like his tenure now with Orlando City is very similar to doing his time with Dallas, where things worked out so well early on for Oscar Pereira under Dallas, and they win trophies and stuff like that. As the year goes along, yeah, things started to get stale, and he was ousted for that. It feels like we're on the point of doing so, and that the good news for Orlando is that they're still in the playoff race, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that their road form has been very good, although recently it hasn't been very good, and that has to be huge concern for Orlando City fans because again they're not winning at home at all. They only have one win so far this season at home. I think that's the lowest out of any team right now. Well, actually, I think New England is another team that maybe only have one win this season at home. That's inexcusable, and that yeah, that's going to be something that the Lions have to fix, and that if they don't, this will be a huge disappointment season. Like all these teams right now in the Eastern Conference are supposed to be world beater, like Orlando, Atlanta, and New England. If you would told me halfway this season all of them would be near the bottom of the standings, you wouldn't have believed me, but that's where we are right now. Then we move on to Miami. Um, for Miami, I think everything is still doing good, or everything is great, but they are definitely starting to slide down to this category. And the reason why I say that is the fact that I feel like for Inter Miami, biggest question heading into this season is their defense. Can they hold up, and can that high end talent basically bail that out? Now, for a while, it did, and that's why they're where they are in the standings. Well, lately it feels like we're starting to see the cracks are starting to show, and now we're starting to see that now that high end talent that they have can't really just simply bail out this bad defense that they had, and that's got to be concerned if you're a Miami fan. And what's even more of a concern is the fact that now as we head to Copa America, this is doing the time that no, they're not going to have Messi for at least a month or so, and that now there is a concern of, well, how will this team would do? I will say that the good news for Inter Miami, because they got so much points in the standing now, and I think they also will get to play not as much game doing this Copa America tournament without Messi as other team, and I feel like that was kind of by design because I think the league decided that yeah, let's make sure Miami has the most game play, and make sure that they at least get as much week off doing the Copa America tournament, so they don't have to not only miss Messi, but also Messi won't they don't have to show too many Miami game when Messi is not there doing that run. But still, this will be a big question. Can they survive without Messi doing this stretch? This season though, there's been times that they say yes, but it's still not enough where you could say that they're going to be gunning for the supporter shield race. I can't believe I'm still hearing people talk about the fact that Miami can be in the supporter shield race, and I get that. Yes, they are currently at the top of the standings, but here's the thing. I mean, they have played the most game out of anybody, and not to mention there are teams behind them in Cincinnati and now RSL really on hot on their heel, and both of those teams have multiple game in hand. And not to mention if Miami does not able to keep winning in games doing this stretch where they're not going to have Messi, I don't think they're gonna be winning the Supporter Shield. I think they will definitely make it to the playoffs. For people to say that they're going to be a Supporter Shield contender, yeah, I think they're about to realize that the reality is going to start to come, and that again, and also it doesn't help these last two games. Miami has not played well at all, and a lot of that has what I just said about the defense being a huge concern. That defense that is just so bad right now. It's hard to believe they're still in first, despite giving up some of the most goals in the Eastern Conference right now. That is a huge concern for this team. Now we move on to Nashville. They're going to be right next to DC, where for Nashville, it's been a very frustrating season in a way where it's like they're kind of stuck in mediocrity, and it's kind of like I think when you look at these last two games for Nashville SC, it pretty much sums up this season for Nashville. They can have games where they look good, and they look like the Nashville of the old, and then there's games where they just do what they did against New England, losing at home, and that new interim head coach boost, it doesn't feel like it's been taking too much effect, and I think maybe a lot of that has to do with the fact that this is still kind of a Gary Smith team, and the system that is still run is kind of similar to Gary Smith, but without Gary Smith being on the bench. So yeah, again, this is a team that I think this is probably going to be how this season going to go, and that maybe they might be one of those teams that maybe are looking to try to hire a permanent head coach. I mean, there are some options right now in terms of the coaching hire. If they want to go to Europe, they can definitely do so now that the season, of course, is over. But yeah, it's been a very frustrating season for Nashville fans, just mainly because they have had weeks where they look very good, and then there's weeks where they just look absolutely horrendous and look like a team that could win the wooden spoon. And then we move on to FC Cincinnati. And for Cincinnati, yeah, everything is still doing great. I know they had that surprising loss against Nashville, but that was really kind of an outlier. Cincinnati has been incredible this season, and we're starting to see something similar to what we saw last season, where they were a team that in the beginning it was a little slow and they couldn't figure out in terms of the goal scoring, but now that they got some reinforcements, especially getting that Kevin Kelsey guy who is really good and could be a breakout start in this league. Now Cincinnati is definitely making the charge, and they are definitely going to be battling alongside with RSL and Miami for that supporter shield standing spot. Now moving on to Chicago. Yeah, for the Fire, it's kind of like right here where, yes, they did get a much needed win against the Galaxy, but they're still bad. Like they're and I would say that, at least for Fire fans, they hope that maybe that's kind of the beginning of the false hope period because if you always look at the Chicago Fire season of cycle, they usually are getting to a point where in the beginning of the season it's been absolute hopeless. But then in the middle of the season, that's when the Fire started to heat up. It's almost like the Fire kind of represent the seasons where it gets a little cold in the beginning of the season, but as we get to the summer, the fire started to get hot, and then once the weather started to get cool again around September and October, yeah, they started to fall apart. I mean, I don't know if that's kind of the reason why they're called the Chicago Fire. Obviously, that's not the reason why they called it the Chicago Fire. I'm pretty sure everybody know why they're called the Chicago Fire, and it's not because of the TV show. But yeah, again, we'll see. Maybe that win can at least spark some false hope for the Fire that they can go on a good run. And again, the sad thing about the Fire is that even if they go on a good run, Fire fans wouldn't believe it because they know that okay, when's the shoe gonna drop? Because I know the shoe is gonna drop eventually around August and September, and that's just kind of a life of a cursed franchise like what we see with the Fire right now. Now, moving on, we got St. Louis. Yeah, St. Louis is kind of like right here where yeah, it's been a rough May for St. Louis. I mentioned before where their fans at first were very frustrated. They would keep drawing games. Now they're frustrated because they're now losing games, and I would say that now losing games is even more frustrating than drawing games. Even though I know drawing games could be very frustrated because I've mentioned before getting points or getting 1 point from a draw doesn't really help you in the standings, but it also is at least a little better than just simply losing games. And again, St. Louis have started to lose a couple of games. They did get a good draw against Miami, and they really went toe to toe with them. Though that being said, they kind of went toe to toe because Roman Burke kind of bailed them out a couple of times. And talk about the defense. Yeah, it's been bad this season, and I think it's kind of carry into last season too because last season their defense don't let the first place finish distracted the fact that St. Louis defense really regressed as the season goes along, and the fact that they didn't really bother to fix that in the off season, it's now carrying into this season. And while Roman Burke has done an amazing job, and again he's going to be once again in contention for goalkeeper of the year again, he can only do so much. To prevent a defense that at times just been non-existent. And now the other issue for St. Louis, besides their defense being bad, is the attack has been kind of sputtering, pretty much throughout this season. A lot of these players are definitely hitting second year syndrome. Looking at Joe Klaus as a prime example. Though I will also say that they're definitely missing Edouard Leuven. Leuven hasn't been available for this team in most of the time due to injuries and sake. They desperately need him back in this team. Now, moving on into Minnesota. Yeah, I think everything is still doing great for Minnesota. Now, I am a little concerned about this upcoming weekend's match against Dallas, where they're going to have 9 players that's missing due to international duty. And I might as well just put MNUFC 2 versus FC Dallas because that's pretty much going to be an MNUFC 2 game against Dallas. And, if they do lose that game, I'm not going to really just say that, oh, things are starting to fall apart. Though I will say this for the Loons. If you ignore the Sporting KC game, which I thought that was a good bounce back performance from them. Yeah, when they did face against some of the tougher teams, they didn't do well whatsoever against them. So yeah, again, we'll see as the season goes along, and there's no doubt that they're just gonna gonna go through some tough stretches against tough opponent, whether or not if they can beat them. I do think that this team definitely needs help in the midfield. I mean, as much as I know there's been talks that they need to have a Reynoso replacement, I think Robin Lott has done a great job in terms of that, and I think that's really not the biggest need that this team need. Biggest need in this team is the midfield, and also maybe another defender on this team, because yeah, these last couple of games, the midfield has been absolute horrid show for this Loons team, and it's kind of the reason why in those game against Colorado and LAFC they only got a point out of both of those games, because the midfield was just getting completely dominated by the opposition. And if you want to be an MLS Cup contender, we know a lot of teams, and especially a lot of good team, has good midfield feel, and that's kind of like the one of the prime thing that they need to do if they want to be a cup contender. And I'm not saying Minnesota is a cup contender. I mean, I would be super deluded to say the Loons are going to be favorite of winning the cup, and I think this could be a year to do so. I mean, this is already a year that they have exceeded every expectation that I thought this team would be in a year that, again, they're kind of similar to Toronto, where it's supposed to be a transitional year, but by sheer luck, this team somehow is doing good and in the fix of the supporter shield raise, and I'm kind of also maybe waiting for when the shoe can start to drop, but it hasn't dropped right now. They've been playing very good so for this season. But again, that next game, and also not to mention during the Copa America times where they are going to be missing some guys, that's going to really test the depth of this team, because and especially the midfield and defense started to regress and started to really might be the reason why this team could maybe regress a little bit as we head into the summer. And then we move on to Sporting KC. Yep. Yeah, this Sporting KC is right here. I already made a video about them earlier about the 10-game winless run, and you already know who needs to be fired from this team, although it's probably not going to happen, because, unless if Peter Remies did something really bad, or this team continued to go on this historic long winless run, Peter Remies probably is still going to be at helm as the head coach of Sporting KC. And yeah, again, not much to say about Sporting KC other than the fact that if you want to know how their fans been feeling, just watch the 10-game winless run video that I did earlier today. It's been nothing but pain and suffering for this team for really since the beginning of April. And then we move on to Dallas. Yeah, Dallas is kind of like right here. They've been right here for a while now. Their fans are probably not happy either, because of the way that they just it just feels like every time when they do have a big win, maybe the season is gonna finally click. Then they lose the next game, and again they just been a pretty bad team throughout the season, and a part of that maybe because once again goal scoring is a problem for this team, but the defense has really regressed this season, and the same goes for Martin Paz too. I mean, I know he did had a good game last game against LAFC, but he's not been the same goalkeeper that he was last season. He's not the one that we saw last season that kind of sometimes stole points for Dallas, and as a result, that's what we get with Dallas right now. Just a team that has been bad throughout the season. And you could say that if I would have put them right here, someone needs to be fired. It's definitely going to be Nico Estevez. That's kind of the person that I've heard a lot of Dallas fans have demanding him to be fired because of the tactics and just the boring style of soccer that they've been playing throughout the season. Then we go to Houston. I would say Houston is kind of right here where it could be better, it could be worse, and they're kind of stuck in mediocrity. Again, it's been kind of inconsistent for the Dynamo. They have games that they look good. There's games where they also don't look so good. I do think that they definitely need some reinforcement this summer, and this is where we'll see whether they can do so. I mean, I feel like, consider they didn't make any reinforcement heading into this season, and that they didn't really regress too badly as a result of that. They're still in a good position right now in the thick of the playoff race. I think that the Dynamo fans will definitely be happy about that, but what they will not be happy is the fact that the ownership group is going to be cheap again. I mean, this team for many years has been a team that's been very cheap, and fans are really frustrated about that. And they thought maybe under new ownership things are going to be better. It was better, at least getting a very decent team like what we saw last season, but the fact that they didn't really quite do so for this to continue to improve must be really frustrating for Dynamo fans. So we'll see whether that can change as we head into the summer. Then we go to Austin. Yeah, for Austin, I think they're starting to slide down to here where, I think a couple of weeks ago I would have definitely put them here, but yeah, things are definitely starting to go south for this Austin team. I mean, remember that good run that they have where they were clearly overperforming their underlying number, and they were kind of having a run very similar to their second season where they're just completely playing out their mind and that they're shit according to their underlying number and their expectancy goals and allow they're just playing way over that mark. Well, recently it hasn't been so. I mean, recently it's been a bit of a struggle for Austin, and the last game pretty much sums that up. They got absolutely blown apart by RSL in that game 5-1. And again, I feel like that was always gonna happen with the way that as much as they've been playing so well, uh, about a month or two ago, eventually you can sense that regression has that happen. There's no way they can continue that incredible run that they had throughout the season. Like what they did in that second season, as great of an achievement that is, it's even more incredible that they were able to stay throughout the whole season of showing that resiliency and just kind of tell the underlying number to take a back seat. But as we've seen before, when you have that kind of thing, eventually things are going there's going to be some regression and there's going to be times where you're going to go for a rough patch. And I think maybe Austin is definitely at that point, and maybe the town wise, at least in the last couple of games, have said there's a reason why many people predict that this team is gonna finish dead last, and at least how they play in the last couple of games, they definitely play like that. The defense once again has been horrible. Well, and the attack, even with Driussi, started to fail to click once again. Then we go to Colorado. I would say the Rapids are kind of like right next to DC United, along with probably the most frustrating fan base right now. Recently, because again, the Rapids, not only things have gone south for them in the last couple of games, but the reason why things have gone south is not because they've been playing badly whatsoever. They actually been playing very good in these last couple of games, and that I've also mentioned about the expectancy goal. My goodness, they must be these last couple of games. They must be leading the league in terms of expectancy goal without getting a win, because there's been so many games in these last couple of games where they have been by far the better team against opposition. They just can't put the ball into the back of the net. Now that being said, in terms of expectancy allow, I think that maybe is also another concerning factor that the Rapids has been leaking goals left and right, and this has started to be like the Rapids team of last season, where last season their defense was absolutely a mess, and not to mention some of their new signing, especially Zach Steffen. Man, what a rough season it's been for Zach Steffen. I think between him and Hugo Lloris, those are two goalkeepers that there was a high expectation that they were going to improve their team, and yeah, both of them didn't really quite do so. Although Lloris has done a little bit better, at least in the last couple of games for LAFC. I can't say that about Steffen. Steffen has not been good whatsoever, and that yeah, they got to figure out that this defensive problem that they've been having, because as much as they have been very good on the attacking end, they're gonna be like Inter Miami, where they're very good on the attack, but they're not very good enough on the defense the front. So we'll see whether they can fix that. Now moving on to RSL. I mean, RSL is definitely right at the top. I mean, I'm pretty sure their fan base are enjoying this stretch of run and basically soaking it in, because it's been incredible, and they can thank Chicho Arango for that, because Chicho Arango, he's definitely giving Lionel Messi a run for his money in terms of the Golden Boot race and maybe even the MVP kind of battle. I mean, I know some people have said that the MVP race is pretty much determined. Everybody know that Messi is probably going to win MVP, but Chicho Arango is having is basically he's saying hold that thought, because he's having an incredible season too. He's been the catalyst of why RSL has just been having an incredible run right now, to a point where how I mentioned before Cincinnati and Miami might be the two teams that compete for the Supporters Shield. Don't look now, but RSL is right there within in the Supporters Shield race, and with how hot that they've been on and this incredible on being run, and also at times show that never say die attitude. Yeah, do not be surprised if RSL might be in this supporter shield race, and might be the team that I think could be the team to beat in the Western Conference this year. Now we move on to Vancouver. So for the Whitecaps, I think they're kind of right here where, I think maybe if I did this video a couple of weeks ago, I think Whitecaps fan would feel like things are going south because they have gone for a really tough stretch. But it has gone a little bit better, at least in the last couple of games. And it also helps the fact that they have won a couple of games, and it seems like Vanni Sartini has got this team back on track. But still, there is that unfortunate burden that Whitecaps fans, they know that they're gonna hear it, and they wish that they can prove people wrong. Can they be able to beat against good teams? And I know in the last game you might say that might be one because they beat a very good Rapids team, but let's not forget that was a game where they kind of got outplayed by the Rapids, and maybe were a little fortunate to get all 3 points. The thing is, if they are able to beat a good team, even if they're playing at home and they're beat one of the top team in the Western Conference, they can do that. That can definitely silence a lot of critics about the Whitecaps of the fact that it feels like they were kind of a pretender when it comes to being an MLS Cup contender or being one of the better team in the West because of the easy schedule that they have. And then we move on to Seattle. For Seattle, I think it's kind of right here where it could be better, it could be worse. They're kind of stuck in mediocrity. In fact, I might as well also put the Portland Timbers here. I mean, both of these teams are very similar. I'm pretty sure both of these fan base are very similar, feeling very similar about their team. Although in terms of the style of play, it's a little different. For Seattle, I think their fans are very frustrated with this boring brand of soccer that they've been playing, and a lot of that is because for a while they do not have Pedro de la Vega, and he's clearly the spark this team. But yeah, obviously they're not scoring a lot of goals. I mean, at least their defense has been pretty good in the last couple of games, and they have to be because if they want to stay in this playoff race, they need to their defense need to be at spot on, knowing that this is attack that has been very sputtering throughout this season. But we'll see whether if that's going to be good enough for them to keep in the playoff race, and especially if Pedro de la Vega goes off, that will really help the Sounders attack, and if this attack can get going, there's no doubt they can rise up the standings. For the Timbers though, it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of like their attack is very good. They're one of the best in the league, but man, that defense is just again this we said this for the past couple of years for this Timber side, and it's hard to believe they still have not addressed this after all these years. They absolutely need some defensive reinforcement this summer. They cannot keep in this race of the playoffs without some defensive reinforcement. Like when you go through a stretch where you have 10 consecutive games where you conceded multiple goals, there's something wrong with your defense, and that's going to be something that absolutely they need to address, and we'll see whether or not if they do so, because on the attacking front they have talent. They have some really good player. Evander has been everything being advertised and even better. Even the same goes for Capacito Rodriguez. He's been scoring the goals for this team, but the defense is the real issue of this team. In some way, they're kind of almost similar to Inter Miami, and that's kind of funny because the guy that currently coached this Timber side used to be the former head coach of Inter Miami. That is Phil Neville. But again, this team needs to be better when it comes to the defensive front. They're not gonna go very far if that defense is going to be continue to be as leaky as what we have seen, not just this season, but really for the past couple of seasons. This team has conceded the most goal out of anybody in the last couple of seasons, and I'm pretty sure Timbers fans are kind of tired of talking about how bad their defense has been in the past couple of years. And then moving on to the San Jose Earthquakes. Yep, they're right here. And I don't really need to explain too much about the Quakes, about being in a panic mode and someone needs to be fired because they've been pretty much bad from the get go. The guy that needs to be fired is obviously Lucci Gonzalez. But even though that is the case, as I mentioned before, the Quakes are kind of in a difficult situation, similar to the Fire, where even if you fired Lucci Gonzalez, I don't think anything is gonna change. And that I will also say that the Quakes are very similar to the Timbers, a team that has some good attacking talent, but on the defensive side, I mean, if you thought the Timbers were bad defensively, just watch how the Quakes defense. I mean, I don't even need to mention too much about how the Quakes defense. Just watch the NYCFC game and especially the last 10 minutes. Oh man, that was brutal to watch, and really kind of almost reminds me of those Chris Leach in 2017, where they stay in the game, and then as soon as they gave up a goal, it just completely fall apart. And unfortunately, unlike the Timbers, where they actually do have some really good high end talent, as much as the Quakes do have that, Her Lopez is definitely the reason why this attack has been so much better compared to what we saw before. But it's not enough to override of just pretty much the worst defensive team in the league. And again, if they don't find some reinforcement, which they desperately needed to, because another reason why I think the defense has been bad. Well, it was bad before, but it's gotten worse. Is because of injury issue. I mean, they have zero depth right now in terms of the defensive front. Like they're getting to a point where they're so short in terms of defender. They're putting Tanner Beeson and Daniel Muni as their back line pairing. Both of those guys are probably the most hated defender right now in the Quakes fan base, and that, yeah, again, they need defensive reinforcement this summer, and if they don't, it's gonna be like what we're gonna see throughout the rest of the season. A team that maybe get a couple of wins because some individual good attacking talent. They're gonna lose a lot of games because their defense just kind of leak goals left and right. Now, moving on to LAFC. Yeah, I think LAFC is going to be right here. Everything is definitely going well for this team, and it looked like we're starting to see the LAFC of the old, a team that in the last 5 games they've been untouchable in terms of the defensive front. So talk about the worst defense with the Quakes. It feels like it's kind of a weird transition to now talk about LAFC being one of the best defensive team in the league, but that's kind of how it is. I mean, they have not conceded a goal in almost 500 minutes, and while their attacks still at times sputter the in this good run, it really doesn't matter, because if you have a defense that don't give up goals, you can score just one or maybe two goals in some of these games, and it should be perfectly fine because your defense is just playing lights out right now in the last couple of games. And then finally talk about their intercity rival, the Galaxy. I would say they kind of started to be right here, where I think the Galaxy are still doing good, but the issue for the Galaxy is that one, they're started drawing way too many games. They're actually all right around the same mark as the number of draws that St. Louis has had at this season. But also the fact that, again, just like the Timbers and maybe just like Inter Miami as well, as much as they have a very good high end talent on the attacking front, it still does not substitute the fact that the defense has been once again a letdown, and that's been kind of a Galaxy tradition. I mean, this is a team that is not just this season; it's been like 5 or 6 or even 7 years now. Now that I mentioned about the defense being bad, and I'm pretty sure Galaxy fans are kind of maybe starting to tire of hearing that, because it's like a repeat recording. But yeah, they got to figure out their defense. Their defense is going to be the big letdown of this team, and also not to mention, do not underestimate when they play against easy team. They have dropped points against team that they easily should have beat, and that last game against the Fire is a clear example of that. And I understand, yes, I think Rennie tried to put a relatively weak squad to rest some of his guys, but as the old saying goes in MLS, there is no easy opponent. You can't just put an easy C team and think that, oh, you can get away with getting 3 points against bad team. There are bad teams are still going to compete, and that if you don't take your opposition seriously, yeah, that can happen, like what we saw with the Galaxy losing against the Fire. And as I said, these games that they lose against teams that they should beat, that's going to be what's going to keep them for being near the top part of the standings. And again, this is a Galaxy team that obviously this season there's a lot of expectation. They not only have to make it to the playoffs, but they need to be one of the best team in the league. And unfortunately, the reason why they aren't is because they've been dropping points against teams that they should beat. And as I mentioned, the defense really letting them down, as it's been the case for the past couple of years. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of doing the emotion index for June, as always, or not in June, I'm sorry, but in May, that is. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button. As always, leave me in the comments below in terms of this ranking. Did I put some team a little bit too low or too high in the emotion index? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.